he's been a Rebbe. I'm not sure if he was part of the Kollel when the Bokerton synagogue when they had it. That goes back some time. And of course, in our shul, Rabbi Sugarman has big shoes to fill, because you know who was here a few months ago? His father, right? Raise your hand if you were here for Rabbi Sugarman's father. Okay. And he spoke about being one of the members of the mob, whatever capacity that was. So he packed the house. So that was still not yet so hard. But still, Rabbi Sugarman has also been a supplier of ours for Love Minisrogim and Arabos. So he has his own interesting connection to our shul. And with no further ado, here. I'm sure he's been here. Somebody saw him parking? Is that right?
That was a rumor.
You start recording? You can pause. Okay. I'm going to see if there's any hands. The introduction. So here's Rabbi Sugarman. Please, if you have not yet, please make sure your cell phone is off or silenced so that it will not be going off during the talk. Thank you very much.
Okay. Shalom. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. First of all, it's I didn't think we'd ever get to the point where I'd be not the first Sugarman to speak at the shul, but the second Sugarman to speak at the shul. On top of that, you already heard from the better Sugarman. So what you're it's too true. So what you're getting is whatever, the next version, not the better version, and his topic is much more interesting. So anyway, for those of you who do not know, my father's Rabbi Sugarman. He spoke here at the shul. When was it?
The beginning of beginning of
May. May. Okay. Did he behave, or I shouldn't ask that question?
No, yeah. Much bigger than you're getting.
Okay, fine. Okay. It's better if I don't know. Okay, good. Anyway, Baruch Hashem. Okay, the topic for tonight is Bikur Cholim. So it's a mitzvah that is a really important mitzvah. Cannot understate the significance of the mitzvah. I'm not going to even try to. Unfortunately, we all know, every one of us has somebody we know that's in need of visitation. And so what I'm going to do over the course of this evening are three things. Number one, we'll just discuss some basic parameters of the mitzvah so that we understand the mitzvah a little bit better. And number two, discuss the concept that comes up in Bikur Cholim, which is really unusual and interesting, that the Shekhinah is together with the Chol. And number three, third topic, which is perhaps the most interesting, if not the most controversial, is when you daven for the Chol, is there an option of which way to daven on his behalf? You'll see what I mean when we get to the third section. So there are three parts to tonight's shir. Let's start with the first part. The first part is just basically the general parameter of the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim? So we know that there's nowhere in the Torah that it actually mentions that we have to be Mevakar Cholim. I asked you the question, where in the Torah does it mention that anywhere that there's a mitzvah to visit the sick? And everyone's going to say the same answer. Everybody. Yeah, I know, I love it. I love it. It's come on universal. Everyone, Avram, and he was sick, and the Kosh Baruch Hu visited him, and that's all really good. First of all, it's fine. First of all, it's called Mount Torah, and anything before Mount Torah doesn't count. That's not me that says that. The Rambam says that. So that's number one. Number two, it's not even clear in the Pesukim that he visited him because he was sick. It's midrash, which are important, and Rashi, which is also important. But in other words, it's not a formal mitzvah per se. You could file it under Chesed, but then I can ask you the question where what mitzvah is Chesed per se? Okay, so. It's not 100% clear that you're fulfilling a mitzvah d'oraisa when you're fulfilling the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. Although, as you'll see, you're saving the person's life. So I guess from that standpoint, we can argue that it's pretty important if you're going to save the person's life. So is it a mitzvah d'oraisa? Is it a mitzvah d'Rabbanan? Most probably it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. And maybe, not maybe. I'll say a little bit stronger. The Rambam writes that in the course of doing Bikur Cholim, so you are going to be fulfilling the mitzvah in the Torah of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Okay, good. So in other words, there's no unique mitzvah per se, but It's incumbent upon us to treat every Jew as if we wanted to ourselves. Can I just share with you an interesting Ramban in Chumash? Ramban in Chumash, the pasuk says, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha," that you have to love your neighbor like yourself. So the Ramban says, it's really interesting. It's really not a popular Ramban. I kind of assume that once you hear it, it's kind of hard to forget, and it's people don't know it in general. The Ramban says it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to love somebody as much as you love yourself. I mean, intuitively, we all know this is true. In other words, the first person that we look out for is ourselves, and then we look out for other people as well. It's certainly noble to be on the lookout for other people. But in other words, just from a practical standpoint, like we're not going to treat somebody better than we treat ourselves. So the Ramban says, if you look at the Ramban, I don't have it in front of me, I'm not quoting from it right now, I'm paraphrasing, but the Ramban says that the Ramban writes on his Parashah Chumash, so the Torah is being mafli, the Torah is exaggerated. Meaning, you should try to love somebody as much as yourself, but it's not possible. But in other words, it's something you should aspire to, but there's no way you can actually love somebody as much as yourself. That's the Ramban of Chumash. Okay, I know it's not an inspiring Ramban. maybe that's why it's not so popular. It doesn't bring about inspiration. Okay, try to love somebody as much as yourself, but you're not going to. So much for inspiration. Let's talk about Bikur Cholim. So again, step number 1 for tonight, we're just going to talk about the parameters of Bikur Cholim. So what exactly is together? What's the parameters of Bikur Cholim? What are we looking to accomplish? I'm going to be quoting now 2 Gemaras. One Gemara in Nedarim and another Gemara also in Nedarim. Okay, the Gemaras happen to be right alongside one another. The first one I'm quoting is from Daf Lamed Tes, and the next one I'm quoting is from Daf Mem. I'm reading the Gemara inside. The Gemara reads, Rabbi Chelbo is weak, and Nafak Achraz Rav Kahan Rav Chelbo Baish. An announcement was made that Rabbi Chelbo was in fact weak, he was sick. Lo Ika Deka Asi. Now nobody's coming and paying him a visit. So in other words, it's a sad story. So there's one of the Amarim gets sick, and the Gemara doesn't tell us why. We don't have no narration, we don't know why, but nobody's visiting him. And so so the Gemara now notes that, it's a little bit strange because there was an actual incident with one of the students of Rabbi Akiva. How does the incident go? Where basically one of the students of Rabbi Akiva gets sick, nobody goes and visits him, and what happens as a result of that? It's not getting any better. What does Rabbi Akiva do? So the Gemara tells us that what Rabbi Akiva does is that he himself goes and he visits a sick person. And now, I'm going to quote the Gemara because the Gemara over here is really important. Rabbi Akiva goes and visits him. What did Rabbi Akiva do? Rabbi Akiva turned into a nurse practitioner. So Rabbi Akiva swept the floor. Rabbi Akiva cleaned up the room. Rabbi Akiva took care of his physical needs. And the Gemara says as a result of that he lived. Amar Le, the student says back to Rabbi Akiva, Heche Yisani, caused me to live. Yas Rabbi Akiva Vidash. Rabbi Akiva at that point said, you know what? This needs to get out there for public consumption. So good. So a short 2,000 years later, I'm doing the same thing. This needs to be out there for public consumption. And that is Kol She'ein Mavakar Cholim. Anyone who does not perform the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, Ki'ilu Shofech Damim, it's tantamount to murder. So in other words, if you have an opportunity to visit somebody who's sick and you don't visit the person who's sick, so you are within the category of Shofech Damim. Ki'ilu, says it. Okay, so first and foremost, from that Gemara, we see pretty clearly that the whole point of visiting somebody who's sick is to basically take care of his physical needs. Or her physical needs. Right? They are in a position, of course, where they cannot take care of themselves and they can't do some of the most basic rudimentary maintenance jobs in their house. So it therefore becomes now our responsibility, the ones who are healthy, to go in there and simply take physically good care of them. And the Gemara says it's Tchiyas HaMesim. It's a revival of the dead. There's another Gemara. The next Gemara also from Nedarim is Daf Mem. It's the very next Daf in the Masechta. Ki Asar Avdim Yama. Kol Mavakar Zechol Agarm Lo Sheyichya V'chol She'einu Mavakar Zechol Agarm Lo Sheyamas. Rabbi Dimi is quoted as saying that if you go visit the sick, you're going to cause them to live, and if you don't go visit the sick, you're going to cause them to die. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand that. That's hard to understand. My grandma, what do you mean you're causing? Does he mean by that Kol Mavakar Zechol Mavakar Zarachim Sheyichya? That if you go visit him, so then you're going to doubt the Kadosh Baruch Hu that he lives. And Chol She'ein Mavakar Zechol, does that mean that if you don't go visit him, so Mavakar Zavrachim Shiamos? So you're going to be staying home and praying that the person died? That can't be what he means. Ella. The Gemara says, okay, so point of clarification. Kol she'ein mevaker chola, ein mevakesh lavrachim lo sheyichyev lo sheyamus. If you don't go visit the person who's sick, you're not going to be davening at all. In other words, you won't be seeing him, in his condition, you're not going to be davening at all. And so therefore, it's really important to go visit the sick, because once you visit him when he's sick, you will be davening on his behalf. Our second Gemara now has just taught us that there's another function to Bikur Cholim, and that is davening on his behalf. So there are two primary purposes now to Bikur Cholim. One is to take care of him, take care of the physical needs. And number two is to daven on their behalf. I can also add, although I don't have a Gemara that states this as strongly as I'm going to say it, but I will quote to you the Ramban in just a moment. There could also be another purpose, another function, which I know speaks much louder in the 21st century than it did back in the time of the Gemara, but I think it's just as true than it is now, and that is emotional support. Meaning that when you visit somebody who's sick, so they're down, understandably. In other words, they're physically down and also they're emotionally down. And so another purpose could be that you're just simply providing them nachas ruach. You're providing them some sort of comfort and some sort of emotional support. Although, to be fair, there's no Gemara that spells that out clearly, but we can add that to the list as well. But clearly from the Gemara, there are two purposes. One is taking care to the physical needs, and number two is davening on their behalf. Okay. I ask you the question. You go in, you visit somebody who's sick. Okay? What do you need? Fine. They tell you, you take care of some of their physical needs. You don't daven. Okay? You forget. You forgot to daven. Your mind was elsewhere. You were actually focused on, you were preoccupied with taking care of the physical needs. You didn't daven. Okay, so did you fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim? Yes or no? Right. If I had a vote. So, right, I'd say yes. I'd say yeah. You did pretty much what you were supposed to do. You took care of his physical needs. Rabbi Kiva says that you caused me to live. So, I would say yes. I want to read to you the lashon of the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef writes, this is Siman Shin Lamed Hey in Yeridea, and the Beis Yosef writes as follows. Okay, it's going to sound really strong. It is really strong. But he writes as follows. Kasav Ramban. This is now the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, 15th century, North Africa, Israel. So he is now quoting the Ramban, 13th century Spain. Kasav HaRamban, B'Torah Sa'adi. Shamina mi'acha de Bikur Cholim kedei sheyichadu b'yarvatz lefanav, v'yazu lo tzrichim atzrichim lechal yom, v'yimtza nachas ruach. Okay. So the Ramban writes, this is Beis Yosef quoting the Ramban. The Ramban writes that the purpose of visiting is to sweep, like we saw together in the Gemara. V'yimtza nachas ruach. The person will be comforted. It's kind of like what I was describing earlier, the emotional support. The Ramban says it. And also, v'od kedei sheyichavein da'ato l'rachamim. And now the person who's visiting is going to have kavanah, proper kavanah, to petition and beseech Rachmanis. V'yivakesh alav, and petition God on his behalf. Hilkach, and the Ramban writes, Amavakar Zachol, if you go visit somebody who's sick, v'lo bikesh alav rachamim, and you didn't beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lo kiyem mitzvah zu. You have not fulfilled the mitzvah. Now, even as I read the Ramban, I've read it once or twice before, even as I read the Ramban, so it's a powerful language, it's kind of hard to imagine. I know the Ramban said it, and I read it. It's kind of hard to imagine that you go in there, you take care of the person, you physically help them, you took care of the house, you took care of the room, and you didn't fulfill the mitzvah. If I may read the words again, by the way, maybe what the Ramban means, he says, well, kiyem mitzvah zu. Maybe he meant by mitzvah zu, maybe he meant the mitzvah of davening on his behalf. Could be. The Ramban, however, is very clear that davening is an integral part of the mitzvah. Perhaps when we walk out of this room tonight, so we're all going to be a little bit more sensitive to this idea, and next time we do Bikur Cholim, I myself, in other words, I'm sure there has been more than once or twice in my lifetime where I went there, I visited, and I didn't daven. I'm sure that that's happened. So in other words, one thing that we can all be more conscientious about is this idea that it's really important to daven on his behalf, specifically when you're there. And that's an integral part of the mitzvah. I've read the language of the Ramban. The Ramban speaks in very, very clear terms about how important it is to daven on their behalf. Just a word about davening on their behalf. It's really popular in shuls throughout America, throughout the world. where they make mishaberos for those people who are sick. And they're really good. Mishaberos are really good. And even in our own personal Shemona Esrei, there's an opportunity to daven on behalf of people who are sick in their own personal Shemona Esrei. However, to be fair and to be honest, that's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about davening when you're actually in the room with the Chola. Meaning that there is a koach, there is a power. We'll describe more of it later on this evening. There's a power to davening while they're in the room with the Chola. Mishaberos and Shul are great. Right, let's continue. Making Mishaberos and Shul. And so is the davening, so in our personal Shemona Esrei. But we are describing right now davening while being in the presence of the Chola. That's extraordinarily powerful. And so it's not just making a mishaberach on their behalf. It's davening while they're in the room and together with the person. Okay. So being that we're here now, we're describing visiting the sick. So there are two functions: that's taking care of their needs and also davening on their behalf. So I'm going to go to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe in Yordei Chelik Aleph. So Rav Moshe discusses the following. And this is not only true by visiting somebody who's sick, it's also true by Nichum Avelim as well. So you can't make it. You physically can't make it. So we live in a world where we're here and friends and family are living in New York and vice versa. And it doesn't just have to be New York. I think there's a world outside of New York, although I'm not sure. So not totally clear on it. But in other words, so you can't make it there and you can't physically be there, so you're going to call them on the phone. So did you fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim while calling them on the phone, yes or no? So Rav Moshe discusses this very point, and let's consider, before we even read the Rav Moshe, the parts of the Rav Moshe inside, well, let's consider. We now know that there are two parts of Bikur Cholim. One is taking care of the physical needs, and the other one is davening on their behalf. So, taking care of the physical needs, how'd you do so far? No. But you call them on the phone. How's it going? Great. Can I do anything for you? Well, yeah. I need you to pick that up for me, but you're, currently 1,200 miles away. So you can't, and I need you to pick up some milk for me, but you're currently 1,200 miles away. And so taking care of the physical needs, so you're useless. No, we don't. I don't mean any disrespect by that. Okay, but there's nothing you can do. Okay, good. So you don't get a check for taking care of the physical needs. You can't sweep the floor. Okay, how about number two? Can you daven on their behalf? Yes. But you're not there. Rav Moshe says, I'm going to read the words of Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says, it's okay, meaning, Rav Moshe says, I'll certainly encourage people to call their sick loved ones on the phone, but Rav Moshe says you don't really get much in terms of prayer. He writes, so, I'll get to some of the highlights of what he writes. V'gam machma shemeri'iyah shemizrage shemavaker Yosef. So umikal b'Yosef tachnunah. So first of all, Rav Moshe says you cannot compare hearing about somebody versus actually seeing the person. Now it's funny, Rav Moshe is writing this before there's something called FaceTime. So maybe Rav Moshe would be a little bit happier if not only you called them, but he actually saw how they looked. But first of all, Rav Moshe says, but I cannot compare somebody who just hears about somebody versus actually seeing them. And Rav Moshe also goes on to write, and not only that says Rav Moshe, but I'm going to be honest, you're there and you're davening, you're physically there and you're davening, your tefillah is going to be more received because the Shekhinah is there as well, which is going to be part 2 of this evening. So stay tuned, as I'm going to talk more about that. And he goes on to point out the Yikar Bikur Cholim Hu Tefillah. So as we already pointed out, the main component of visiting somebody who's sick is davening. So, and if you're just talking to the person over the telephone, so it's really hard to ascertain exactly what you're davening for. It's kind of vague. You're kind of you're guessing. Kadosh Baruch Hu give him a refuah, even though I don't know what's wrong with him or her. Rav Moshe says, really, when all said and done, I didn't read this part. Rav Moshe writes, it's certainly better than nothing. In other words, certainly call the person. But do not think that calling the person is anything close to actually being there physically there. A, you're not taking care of their physical needs, and B, even as far as davening is concerned, it's far then acceptable in terms of davening. With that stated, I want to move on now part 2 for this evening, and that is, it's a strange idea. Rav Moshe made a comment about it, and now I'm going to discuss it in more detail. Okay, when we are sick, unfortunately, Rahmanas, when any one of us gets sick, seriously ill, so sometimes the thinking is that where's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And really, it's exactly the opposite. Meaning, it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is any further away. In fact, just the opposite. When we are sick, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is even closer. In other words, the Gemara says, and I'll read the Gemara in just a moment, the Gemara says that when a person is sick, the Shekhinah is right there in the room. Kadosh Baruch Hu, to the best of our understanding, Kadosh Baruch Hu, of course, is not a physical entity, it's not a corporal body, so we cannot understand this with any type of physical understanding, but still, the idea is that there is more Shekhinah within the presence of a Chola than not. And so now that the Shekhinah is there, that's what Rav Moshe was making reference to earlier, is that when you're physically there and you're davening on behalf of the Chola, so not only is the Chola there, the Shekhinah is there as well. So first of all, we're going to read a couple of Gemaras together with you, in terms of this idea that the Shekhinah is together, resting together with the Chola. So, the Gemara, once again, another Gemara in Nedarim. So the Gemara goes like this. How do I know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sustains somebody who's sick? Like Zan from the, from bench. Hazan es ha'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sustains somebody who's sick. The Pasuk says, Hashem yisadeni al eretz davai. The Pasuk in Tehillim, the 41st paragraph of Tehillim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to so aid, Samech Ayin Dalit. He's going to support me while I'm on my sick bed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right there taking care of us when we're sick. So the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right there above the bed of somebody who's sick. Hashem Yisadin al eretz davai. The Gemara quotes the pasuk as well. Hanichnas levaker sachol. Somebody going and visiting the sick. Lo yeshiv al gabi mitav al gabi sasav al gabi kiseh. You can't be above the Shekhinah. Now, we don't fully understand this Gemara. The Mefarshim go on to point out that back in the day, when somebody was sick, they lie down, not in an elevated bed, but basically on some sort of mattress on the floor. And being that the Shekhinah was directly above, so if you sat in a chair, it's disrespectful to the Shekhinah is right there. So what you want to do is you want to sit on the floor because you don't want to be any higher than the Shekhinah. Again, to the best of our understanding. Points out most of the more contemporary poskim that nowadays that the chola is actually on a bed, on a raised elevator on the bed, so you could sit on a chair alongside. You don't have to. You don't have to. It would be okay nowadays to sit in a chair. But anyway, the Gemara says you can't sit in a chair because the Shekhinah is right there. Good. So there's this idea, there's this concept that that when you go visit the chola, so the Shekhinah is right there in the room. Okay. Where else in halacha do we have this idea that the Shekhinah is there? There's another. It comes up elsewhere in halacha that the Shekhinah is right there. That is when you have a minyan. When you have a quorum. So when you have a minyan, so in other words, should you be davening at home or should you be davening with a minyan? The answer is should be davening with a minyan. What's the advantage of a minyan? And the answer is because with a minyan, so you have more of a connection with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shekhinah is together with the minyan, and so as a result of that, so it allows us to say more things. But in other words, it's just a simple reality that you're davening with the Shekhinah right there. Davening with the chola is similar, very similar. Really interesting halakha I'm going to share with you in terms of the similarities of davening with a minyan and davening with a chola. By the way, I don't think this logic is right, but I'll throw it out there for consideration. Meaning, if you have a minyan to go to and you have a chola that you can go to, so in other words, is it on equal footing with one another? Can I say davening with the chola is just as good as davening with a minyan? I don't think so, but okay, so certainly consideration. But I'll tell you something where I know for sure it's absolutely correct and true, and that's as follows. When you're davening with a minyan, so we do things that are slightly unusual that we'll never do for davening by ourselves. What language do we say Kaddish in? Kaddish is said with a minyan, only with a minyan. What language is Kaddish in? Aramaic. So Kaddish is in Aramaic. That's correct. And when we take out a Sefer Torah, so there's a paragraph that we say when we take out the Sefer Torah, B'Shmei, and that also is in Aramaic. There is one more. Shabbos, right after we put away, right before we put away the Sefer Torah, right before Ashrei, right before Avarachmem. So there's a couple of paragraphs that were instituted that were in Aramaic. Okay, Yakum Porka. When we're davening not with a minyan, What do we say that's not in Hebrew? Without a minyan, what can we say that's not in Hebrew? Lashon HaKodesh. It's okay, you can think. It's a trick question. There's no, there's nothing. There's nothing. There's no doubt. In other words, biyachid is when davening by ourselves. When davening by ourselves, there's nothing. In other words, everything is said in Lashon HaKodesh. Shema, obviously, which is Chumash, obviously is in Lashon HaKodesh. Shemona Esrei is in Lashon HaKodesh. Yeah, so that's good. That's a good example. The Uvalotzion, we're saying the Psukim, we're saying Targum on the Psukim. So in other words, it's true, we are saying in a different language, but it's not tefillah, we're translating the Psukim in Targum. But that's a good example. It's a really good example. But in terms of tefillah, in terms of davening, like Kaddish, Yikum Porkan, B'rich Shmei, only done with a minyan. But when there's no davening that's instituted, biyachid is where you are going to be saying it non-Hebrew. Here's an interesting halacha. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. When I'm davening by myself, so I'm not davening in the presence of the Shekhinah. Again, I know these are hard concepts. They're hard concepts to understand. Certainly hard concepts for me to communicate. But it's a halacha. It's a simple halacha. In other words, when I'm davening by myself, so I'm not davening in the presence of the Shekhinah. So my tefillos right now have to travel. Now, in terms of the trajectory and how they travel, so I'm obviously at a loss in terms of how to explain it. But I can say it's nice and simple. Your tefillos are going to travel. And being that your tefillos have to travel in terms of reaching Kadosh Baruch Hu, so you got to put them on the best type of vehicle you can. And that vehicle is called Hebrew. It's called Lashon HaKodesh. Anytime we're davening, and it's instituted that we're going to be davening by ourselves, so we're going to only be davening in Lashon HaKodesh. We're not going to be davening in any other language. However, the halacha states that when you're davening with a minyan, and you're together now with the Shekhinah, so we have now opportunities to daven, and davening doesn't have to be limited to Lashon HaKodesh. Davening can be in other languages as well. Now it happens to be that over the years, Aramaic is the only one that actually turned into an instituted tefillah. But we're not. Kaddish is in Aramaic, and how do you have that? Because Kaddish is only said with a minyan, and with a minyan you have the Shekhinah, and so therefore you don't have to be davening exclusively in Lashon HaKodesh. Right? So Shulchan Aruch. I'm reading now from the Shulchan Aruch. Now that you heard all this, so all this is going to make perfect sense. Kishemevakish alav rachamim. The Shulchan Aruch writes in terms of the halachas of Bikur Cholim, when you're davening on his behalf, im mevakish lefanav, if you're davening in front of the chola, you could talk now to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to daven to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, but your language could be whatever language you want. You could say it in Hebrew, you could say it in English, whatever language you're comfortable with. Now, if you're davening not in front of him, then you should only be asking and petitioning a Kadosh Baruch Hu only in Lashon HaKodesh. Now, without my introduction, the halakha would sound very strange. You're there in the room together with the chola, any language. You're not in the room together with the chola, it has to be Lashon HaKodesh. What is that? That's very strange. But in other words, based on everything we said, so now you totally understand. The chola has the Shekhinah right there. The Shekhinah is right there, like a minyan. So now that the Shekhinah is right there, you're not limited in terms of what language you can speak in. You can speak in Lashon HaKodesh, you can speak in any other language. However, shalom b'fanav, when you're not in front of the chola, so then you are now no longer speaking directly in the presence of the Shekhinah, and so now you have to do it in Lashon HaKodesh. So says the Shulchan Aruch, and now we totally understand. Parenthetical note, by the way, just while we're on the topic of davening in Lashon HaKodesh, so just an interesting discussion, totally off topic, but not totally off topic, but off topic of Bikur Cholim. Let's say you're davening with a minyan, you don't understand Hebrew, but you know how to read it, and you understand the language that you're used to speaking. I guess maybe English would probably be the best example in this room. So you can read Hebrew but don't understand it, or you can read and understand English. What's preferable in terms of davening? Is it preferable to daven in Lashon HaKodesh, or is it preferable to daven in a language that you're familiar with? So so it's certainly understandable that you'll have an opinion on the matter. It's debated amongst the poskim in terms of what's preferable. It happens to be that The Bir Halacha is quoted as saying that he believes that the Hebrew is preferable, even if you don't understand it. Hebrew, there's a power in Hebrew. We talked about Hebrew being a solid vehicle, one of the strongest vehicles in terms of transporting your tefillahs. So he's strongly of the position that you should be davening in Hebrew. I certainly hear an argument otherwise, but that's the Bir Halacha. Yes?
I'm confused. If you're in an Indian,
yes,
you're saying Kaddish and it's in Aramaic.
Yes.
As opposed to Lashon HaKodesh.
Right.
Why?
So why was Kaddish instituted in Aramaic?
Yeah.
So first of all, it was only instituted in a context of a minyan, and you have the Shekhinah over there. But why specifically go out of the way to do an Aramaic? My best guess probably also has a lot to do in terms of where it was instituted.
Is the language of people.
You're right, correct. Meaning, right, it was a spoken language back then. They spoke Aramaic. Not only speak Aramaic in Buffalo, they also spoke Aramaic in Israel as well. Post-Korban, during Bayit Sheni and post-Bayit Sheni, they spoke in Aramaic. All contracts that were written up were written in Aramaic, even in Israel.
I understand that, but Lashon HaKodesh should be more preferable.
I hear your point, but I guess they also must have taken into consideration people understood Aramaic. But okay, I hear it. Ksuva. All contracts. Ksuvas in Aramaic, all contracts were written in Aramaic. Absolutely correct. Okay. Last topic for this evening, and for sure the most interesting and controversial, is as follows. Okay, until 8 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. How do I'll preface, you'll figure out very quickly what we're going to be talking about in the third topic, but I'll start off with the following story. The story that I'm going to tell right now is a story told in the Gemara, and it is regarding the death of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Just to make sure that we're all clear, we're on the same page. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is the editor of the Mishnayos. Torah Shabbat Peh being transmitted and finally transitioned from being an oral tradition going from generation to generation and moving to a written form. So that's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi lived in the 2nd century. He lived a couple generations after Korban Bayit Sheni, after the destruction of the Second Temple. And he was, the Gemara says, one of the greatest leaders that we had historically, in terms of both being a leader of the Jewish people and a Talmid Chacham. So the Gemara says, never do we have somebody who really synthesized both in terms of leadership and being a Talmid Chacham. I mean, I can't understate how important he was historically to us in terms of the Masorah, in terms of being the transition of our Torah Shabbat Peh. He's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Now, obviously, as we go through the Mishnayos, so he wrote them obviously while he was alive. The Gemara recounts the Gemara's in Sufis. The Gemara is Kuf Gimel, Kuf Daled. The Gemara recounts the death of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. It's a sad story, and I'm going to tell the story. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, as he was approaching his last days, so unfortunately he was really sick. He was in really bad shape. There used to be a time back when where our great sages used to wear tefillin all day. Nowadays it's not the minute, it's not the accepted practice. People don't wear tefillin all day. Nowadays we just limit our wearing of tefillin only to the morning and only to Shacharis. Wearing tefillin requires a guf naki, it requires a clean body, clean mind. It is hard for us to concentrate and focus. I know that's a major thing recently, our inability to concentrate and focus. But in other words, nowadays, this has been true now for many years. I guess it's just kind of, accentuated the last number of years. So to be in a clean state of mind, a clean state of body, so it's very hard for us to do. So we limit our wearing of tefillin only to the morning. Back in the day, however, so our Talmidei Chacham used to wear tefillin all day. And the Gemara recounts that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was suffering terribly in his last days, and he had some sort of stomach issue, and it required him to go to the bathroom. Obviously, you cannot wear your tefillin in the bathroom, and so the Gemara tells us how Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi would struggle to take off his tefillin and put it back on every time he would go in and out of the bathroom. And because of his illness, he had to frequent the bathroom on a really regular basis. Amta the Rebbe, the maidservant of Rebbe. The maidservant of Rebbe comes up a number of times throughout the Gemara. She was a special woman. The Gemara never tells us her name, but she was really special. I assume she was Jewish, the Gemara never tells us that, but I kind of suspect she was. Very often the young students who would go visit Rabbi, so in other words, just through osmosis, just through being in the house of Rabbi, so she was in of herself a Talmida Chachama, she was a extraordinarily wise woman. Very often she would even correct. The Gemara tells us on a number of occasions how she would even correct the students of Rebbe when they said something wrong. So I'm sure it wasn't flattering to them, but she corrected them. She told them, no, you're not right. And when it comes to definition of words, the Gemara tells us that very often the time when the rabbis didn't know what a certain word meant, they turned to her and she told them what the word meant. She was a really, really special woman. And the Gemara tells us that she's watching Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, she's tending to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, she's watching Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and she sees that he's suffering terribly. And she turns to Kadosh Baruch Hu and she says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, look, you know, the Rebbe's in a terrible state right now, and I'm asking you, Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you could do me a favor and have Rahmanas on him, and basically put an end to his suffering. She, however, understood that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was not going to be dying anytime soon. And why? So the Gemara describes how there were a group of students of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi who were standing in the front of the house, and they were davening on his behalf. And they knew, and she knew quite clearly that as long as they were davening on Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's behalf, so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was not going to die. So she was in a really interesting conundrum, where on one hand, she saw the pain and suffering that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was enduring. On the other hand, she knew that as long as students were davening on behalf of the Rebbe, so he wasn't going to die. So what did she do? So she took a jug. She went to the roof of the house, right around where the students were davening. She dropped the jug. Jug made a huge sound as it landed and crashed on the floor. All the students did not see that coming. They all were startled. They all stopped davening, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died. And so ends the life of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So based on that, so let's go back to a Gemara that I read earlier this evening. Let's go back to a Gemara that I read earlier this evening. Let's read it again more carefully. I'm going to go back to the second Gemara that I quoted, the Gemara Nedarim, and I want to read it again. And now, as I read it carefully, so I want you to think about that story that I just told you. When you go visit somebody who's sick, you're going to cause him to live. And if you don't visit him, so then you're going to cause him to die. My grandma. To which the Gemara says, what are we talking about? What are you causing? Elema, the Gemara says, do you mean to say, if you visit the sick, you're going to adopt that he lives. And if you don't visit the person who's sick, you're going to pray that he dies? That's absurd. So to which the Gemara says, do you really think that? Ella. So the Gemara says like this, rather, this is what is meant. And now I'm going to slowly and carefully read the Gemara. Listen carefully to what the Gemara now is saying. If you don't go visit the person who's sick, you're not going to be davening to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, lo sheyechya, v'lo sheyamas. Not that he lived, nor that he died. Meaning, what the Gemara sounds like it's saying is that when you go in there and you see the person who's chola, so you're going to daven. What are you going to say when you're there? How are you going to daven to Kadosh Baruch Hu? What are you going to ask at Kadosh Baruch Hu? Depends. In other words, if it's something where you can recover, so you'll pray that yichya. And if it's something that they can't recover, so then you're going to daven shiyamas. If I read the Gemara to you at the beginning of this evening, and I said that as clearly as I'm saying it right now, you'd say, no. You're going to daven that the person died? That's what the Gemara sounds like it's saying. And now go back to the story that I told you. The story I told you, I'm to the Rebbe, the maidservant to Rebbe. Not only did she daven to Kadosh Baruch Hu that Rebbe died, on top of that, she also silenced the Talmidim who were davening that he should continue to live. You know, once you hear the story, so then you say to yourself, well, she knows what she's doing, she knows what she's talking about. And the Gemara over here says, yeah, under certain circumstances, if you want to daven for the person to die, sounds like it's a plausible explanation of the Gemara. Now, when I say it sounds like a plausible explanation of the Gemara, so if you look at the Gemara over there, the Ran, one of the preeminent commentaries on the Gemara, so he writes with very clear writing, a clear approach. He says there are occasions when you're approaching a chola, and he says two things have to be taken under consideration. Number one, the chola is terminal. In other words, they cannot recover from the illness that they're currently experiencing. And number two, and by the way, of course, we don't know any of these things with absolutes. Obviously, we have to deal with the medicine that we're currently living with. Well, number one, the chola is terminal. Number two, the chola is suffering terribly. Says the Ran on his commentary to the Gemara Nadam that we just read, that if you have both of these conditions met, so then you are allowed and entitled to daven that the person receive Rachmanus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in this regard it would mean, you daven that HaKadosh Baruch Hu please put an end to that person's suffering. That is the Ran in Nedarim. He says it in clearest of terms. The Ran says, and how do I know that I'm right, aside from the fact that I just read the Gemara together? I know, because I'm on to the Rebbe. The Ran actually quotes the Gemara in Sufis and says, take a look at the story over there of the death of Rebbe. In other words, she actually petitioned HaKadosh Baruch Hu that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Rebbe's neshama back, and on top of that, she also silenced all the Talmidim who were doubting that he lives. So the Ran said, look, I'm right. I think I'm absolutely right. If the circumstances warrant it, you can daven for a person, for a HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have rachmanis on that person and put him out of their suffering. Meaning davening, of course.
But she didn't just daven. She took action.
Right. But in other words, her action, but her action was only limited in the capacity of davening. Meaning her action was just to stop other people from davening. Okay. To be as clear as possible on a topic that's as serious as this. To be as clear as possible. Anything that we physically do to the person themselves in terms of acceleration of death is called ritzicha, it's called murder. So in other words, if we're talking about anything to do to the person themselves, any physical action taken to the person themselves is an act of ritzicha, it's an act of murder. We're not talking about an action. We're just talking about davening. In other words, we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're petitioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu to intervene and do what he feels is right. But in other words, if we see that the better move over here would be Rachmanis, so then that we are in fact allowed to ask. The only discussion that we're having over here is only as it relates to davening. We're not discussing any kind of physical intervention whatsoever. So you have a Ran in Nedarim who offered a pshat that I just shared with you. And so, is this accepted? Is this an accepted viewpoint? Meaning, are we allowed to do this? So Rav Moshe in one of his tshuvas, so he goes through everything I just told you. He goes to the Gemara Nedarim, he goes to the Ran, he goes to the Gemara Ksuvos, and Rav Moshe says, yes, he's of the opinion that this is something that you are in practice allowed to do. You see somebody who's suffering, you see somebody who's terminal, and you want to, and we're supposed to daven to Hashem. So under those circumstances, Rav Moshe says you can ask the HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the person, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the person out of his suffering. Okay, good. That's the opinion of Rav Moshe. Since Eliezer, Rav Eliezer Oldenburg. Rav Eliezer Oldenburg is one of the, in the last generation, one of the preeminent poskim of medical halacha in Israel. He wrote volume upon volume of tshuvas of response literature. It happens to be that he was also somewhat of a baki, somewhat of an expert in the medical field. And so he wrote a number of tshuvas as it related to medicine and all different types of medical shadows that came up in his day. And so he also addressed this question of whether or not we can follow the opinion of the Ran. We can possibly like the Ran. And the Tzitz Eliezer writes as follows. I'm now paraphrasing. I'm not quoting it directly inside, but he writes as follows. He says, number one, I'll start off with this conclusion. No, we do not follow the opinion of the Ran. Under no circumstances, writes the Tzitz Eliezer, can you go into a chola and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, petition HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the person be put out of his suffering. And by the way, can I just make one common sense point before I share with you all what Tzitz Eliezer says? Meaning to say it audibly, right in front of the chola, is this is common sense I'm saying right now. To say it audibly in front of the chola is probably a terrible thing to do. So that's in other words, even as we're entertaining this discussion, So just to realize that, in other words, it's a petition between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and don't let the chol overhear them. Okay. That's one point for common sense. Okay, the Tzitz Eliezer writes as follows. He makes three basic points in terms of why it is that he says that I would never subscribe to such a position. I would never advocate davening for somebody to die. Number one, writes the Tzitz Eliezer. Generally speaking, if something is codified halacha, where do I find codified halacha? Halacha which is codified can be found in the Rambam, in the Shulchan Aruch. In other words, we have svarim that are written over the years that codify the halacha. Where can I find this halacha mentioned by the Ran? So the answer is none. I can't find it in the Rambam. I'm not going to find it in the Rambam. I'm not going to find it in the Shulchan Aruch. It's simply not codified. Now, certainly the Shulchan Aruch, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, certainly he knew the Ran. In other words, there's no way he didn't know the Ran. He knew the Ran's comment in the Dara. And he didn't bring it down the halacha. The Rambam also. Now the Rambam is a little bit unfair historically. The Rambam comes before the Ran, but still. In other words, if this is a legitimate way to explain the Gemara, so the Rambam would have written down his halacha. The Rambam does not. So in other words, if we look at our major works of halachic significance, so you're not going to find it anywhere. So the Tzitz Eliezer says point number one. Point number one is that we do not find this codified anywhere amongst the major posting. That's number one. Number two, writes the Tzitz Eliezer. Tzitz Eliezer says, look, we know the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that the whole purpose of being in this world is to prep us for Olam Haba. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that you can't compare one moment of life in this world to all of Olam Haba. Meaning, Olam Haba is great, but where do we rack up the points? Where do we get the credit? We only get the credit in this world. So in other words, we want to be in this world as long as possible. We want to achieve and accomplish as much as we possibly can on this earth before we move on to the Olam Ha'emes, before we move on to the next world. And so what are we asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu that someone receive an early termination. Now granted the person's sick and granted the person's suffering, and it's unless you and I have been there, can't relate to what that person's going through. But the Tzitz Eliezer says to be an advocate for somebody to receive some sort of early termination and lose chelik in Olam Haba because he's missing out in whatever time was allotted to him in this world. So Tzitz Eliezer says it's also really hard to hear. Hard to hear that we should ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that anyone in this world should receive an early termination. And finally, write the Tzitz Eliezer as follows. Let's go back to the story of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, as I have been pointing out, so Amta the Rebbe was a special woman. She was a really special woman. But let's not forget, says the Tzitz Eliezer, the students of Rebbe also, they weren't slouches themselves, meaning that they were of the opinion. Now, granted, they may not have known as intimately as Amta the Rebbe, this makes up into Rebbe, in terms of the kind of suffering that Rebbe was going through. But they certainly knew that Rebbe was sick, meaning they were davening for Rebbe. So they certainly knew that he was sick, and yet they felt that it was important to continue to daven that he lives. So in the very least, what we can say, says that Tzitz Eliezer, is Amta the Rebbe felt one way, but the students of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi felt another way. So in other words, it's not such a clear-cut conclusion from the Gemara to say, oh, because she stopped him from davening, therefore that's the halacha. Okay, that's her opinion. And, not to minimize her opinion, it's a valid opinion. But so are the students. The students are davening that he lived, they're also entitled to an opinion, and they also do have an opinion. And they daven that he continued to live. So in other words, Tzitz Eliezer says, even after learning the story in Sivos regarding the death of Rebbe, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's one side to the issue. Clearly, there are two sides to the issue. So the Tzitz Eliezer says, so I don't know, just looking at the Gemara, we can safely conclude that what she did was absolutely correct and there's no other side to look at it. It's not true. There's another side to look at it, i.e. the side of the students, of Rebbe's students. But again, I realize that you can counter-argue by simply saying, she was there in the room, she knew better. Okay? I certainly hear that, but the Tzitz Eliezer says, but at least you can make an argument that the students also have an opinion on the matter. Okay, so, third topic, if you haven't guessed already, so is there ever a position where you go to see somebody who's sick and you ever doubt the person died? Before coming tonight, you would have said, that sounds crazy, and it's not so crazy. meaning that the Gemara in the Dharam seems to indicate such. The Gemara says, if you don't go visit the person who's sick, you're not going to pray that he either live or die. Sounds like the Gemara is saying that there are actually two options. The Ran says it very clearly, that if the person is suffering and the person is terminal, you can daven that the person died. The Ran uses the Gemara in Ksubas with the death of Rabbi as a proof for his position. Is that an accepted position? La halacha. The Ramosha says yes, and Eliezer says no. As far as what we should do from a practice standpoint, so what we should do is we should turn to our local Rabbanim and ask them for guidance on this matter. Meaning, obviously, these are really important issues. These are really significant issues. And so our local Rabbanim, what I did is I just provided a little bit of information. So now you're guarded, you're girded with a little bit more information. But in terms of what we should do practically, we turn to our Rabbanim. Yes?
Would the simple solution be to pray about Kodesh Baruch Hu to do what's best for
Yeah,
you take him away or heal him?
I like that suggestion. I myself suggested that in the past, but I'm going to be honest with you. In other words, in terms of the Ran says either or. In terms of Ramosha and Eliezer, they take sides on it. Meaning, I like your middle position. I hear your middle position. just to be honest, I haven't seen anyone say it. But what you're saying sounds reasonable. Yes?
Isn't there an idea that Yisurim are considered a way to cleanse the body? There's an idea of Yisurim Shalava.
Right. That one of the Eliezer's points is that for every moment you're in this world, so you're going to be getting stronger, and you don't want to take that away from someone. Right. That's what Eliezer said. Yeah. Okay. Everyone have a. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Would that opinion extend to the Bola themselves?
Meaning what? That he should die.
Right.
Right. It could be. Meaning we are really speaking from the standpoint of the Mavak. Meaning you could be right. My whole focus tonight has just simply been on the person who's doing the mitzvah of Bikkur Chol. Could be right. Okay, everyone, it's a pleasure being here this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Rabbi Sugarman. We'll start Mincha as soon as we can.